Hello, and welcome to That Squirrel Speaks. Today is Thursday, January 16th, and this is a bonus episode. So if you're looking for a regular woolly episode, this isn't it. Just go back and look for a numbered episode. In this episode, I'll be talking about beeswax wraps. What? That's right. So thanks to the patrons of the podcast who donate via PayPal, Ko-Fi, or Patreon, I'm able to put out a third episode every month. So yay them! Woohoo! And also thanks to them, none of my podcasts are behind a paywall. So hooray! If you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, you can find information on my YouTube right there in the little pull down under Squirrel Support. And I would greatly appreciate it, as would all the other humans who enjoy this show. So today's going to be tutorial-ish. I like to call them talktorials about beeswax wraps. So do you know what that is? So if you're looking for an alternative to saran wrap mostly, but maybe aluminum foil or just like whatever you're storing your foods in the fridge or on the counter, what have you, beeswax wraps are an option. It's basically a piece of fabric imbued with the awesomeness of beeswax. And you can use it like saran wrap. So you have something like this and you're like, oh, I had this amazing, what's this called again? I just ate a piece of it. I had this amazing giant citrus fruit for lunch, but I could not eat this last piece. Don't lie to yourself, just eat that last piece. But whatever, just in case. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to use saran wrap, so I just put it in here. I scrunch it all up. And then the beeswax makes the fabric sticks to itself. So it'll stay nice. And it also helps to seal in some moisture. So you have something like that. You can just throw it in your fridge or what have you. So you can use the beeswax wraps pretty much just in place of saran wrap. Or maybe what you would use a plastic bag for. You don't want to use them for any like meats or things that you're going to have to wash, you know, the container or the wrapping vessel in hot water. So just use them for your veg and your fruits and all that good stuff. Cheeses is great too. But just be aware of what you're going to use them for. What else? So I like to kind of think of these as, they're not really tutorials because quite frankly, there are better resources for the actual tutorial part of this. Like I learned from doing it. I learned to do it from watching another source. And in this case, that source is Crafty Patty, and that's Patty with an I. She has a YouTube video that's called something like 4 methods or how to make beeswax wraps in 4 methods. And it is the best info out there that I could find. She's very thorough. She gives you 4 different ways to make beeswax wraps. But I'm doing mine here just like as like, I'm not I am not the person you pay to take the class from. I'm like your friend who's like, oh, I'm really excited about these beeswax wraps. Why don't you come over and we'll do one together? Okay, so that's the difference. So this might be just like something that gets you interested in the thought of it or just bring it to your attention in general. Or if you're just folding laundry and you're like, why don't I have that squirrel lady talk to me? Also that. But so she's a great resource if you want the nuts and bolts of it. But the rest of this episode will just be how I make mine. I do not use the pine resin. So that will be a little bit different. I just use beeswax and jojoba oil. So that'll be slightly different than other things you might see. It's what works for me. Your mileage may vary. And here we go. So let's talk a little bit about what you'll need. For one thing, this is my setup. You'll need either you can use your ironing board with some parchment paper. I'm using the bath mat and parchment paper on a table just because it's easier to film this way. But you can use towels or whatever. You just need something that's that's not you're not ironing right on your table surface, obviously. Don't be married to anything that's here because you're probably going to get wax on it. Wax does clean up. It's just kind of a pain. It's sticky. And that's the point of the beeswax wraps, is that they are sticky. So I just have parchment paper down. I have it in a roll. I usually use baking sheets when I'm baking, but I did buy a roll for this project because it's easier just to kind of fold it over like a little book when you're doing your ironing, because you will need an iron. But you can definitely use sheets. Doesn't matter. Then you need some sort of quilter's cotton or some sort of lighter weight fabric. You don't want heavy duty fabrics. You want a relatively tight weave. So I wouldn't use like a gauze or anything, but also just because they're more expensive. But just quilter's cotton works great. You'll want to pink the edges, and I'll show you that in just a second, or the way I do it. I'll show that to you in just a second. And then you need beeswax. You can buy like the little beeswax pastilles, like the little melty bits. I make beeswax candles sometimes, so I have like hunks, like pound blocks of beeswax. That's what I use. And you're going to need something to melt it in. Now, when I'm melting wax for other projects, I use like an actual pouring pitcher, but for this, that pitcher is like this deepish, and it's hard to put your hand in and not burn yourself. So what I have done today, and what I do when I'm doing this, is I set up kind of like a little double boiler. This is a fondue pot, just like an electric fondue pot, with some water. And then I have like a little wire rack in it, like you would use for canning or something. And then just a mason jar with your beeswax in it. I do use a wide mouth jar. I think the narrow ones are, I didn't use the narrow one. It just made more sense. So this is like one of these little squat fat ones, and it works really well. So yeah, you need a brush. So I actually just use these little foam brushes because I had them on hand, and they've held up really well. I was kind of afraid they would disintegrate quickly, but I did some of these with friends, and we used over a pound of wax, and we had like 2 or 3 of these brushes, and they've held up really well. You can totally use a regular paintbrush, but if you use a bristle brush, just know that it's gonna be dedicated. It's not gonna be cleanable. I did use a silicone brush, like a cooking silicone brush, and I was able to clean that off just by putting it in the oven at 200 degrees for like 10 minutes and then wiping it down. And that is generally like the rule of thumb I use for cleaning all beeswax stuff, is I put it in the oven at 200 degrees for like 5-minute increments. Now, it's important to keep an eye on it because beeswax makes candles because it's flammable. Period. So, you don't like say, oh, I just need to melt this wax. I'm just going to go do some chores and then come back when it's melted. You need to keep an eye on it or set lots of timers so that you're remembering to check on it. I think the melting point is like 150 degrees. They say, and this is Fahrenheit. I don't know my equivalents. I apologize. It melts at 150 degrees. It starts to discolor, they say, at 185. I don't have a care about that. And then its flash point is 400 degrees. So I don't know. Yeah, so just be cautious. 200 degrees seems very safe to melt it at, and I've never had a problem, but I certainly would not leave it in there for more than, again, 5-minute increments just to check on it. And usually you'll have to put it in there, let it melt, and then wipe it with a paper towel. And that's an instance where I do use paper towels because it'll just get on your cloth and then it'll be ruined as well on your towel. So that's the stuff you need. And then the other thing I'm using is jojoba oil. You can get it at Amazon. I think you can probably get it at like a Whole Foods, but I'm not sure. I had some because I use it for making moisturizers and stuff. But what it does is it adds an antimicrobial factor, but it also just gives the beeswax wrap more flexibility. So it's less likely to crack when you're molding it or twisting it or whatever. So I do find that to be quite useful. Now, most recipes that you'll see online or directions have a pine resin element. And you can buy pine resin. This one is already powdered and it just looks like a powder. You can also buy it, almost looks like amber or something. And then you can crush it with a rolling pin, just like you're crushing crackers or something. I don't know if I just got like a bad batch. This is highly reviewed or very well reviewed on Amazon. So I'm not sure what happened. It might just be me. But I've tried to use it. I tried initially just to mix it like you're supposed to. And then that did not work. I had a horrendous mess of like this globule. It looked like a strange little alien baby in my wax jar. It was not good. So then I thought, oh, maybe I'm supposed to like sprinkle it in slowly. So I did that, and that did not work again. It just kind of all adhered to itself and was a giant mess. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll just paint the wax on and then sprinkle the pine resin on top and then iron it all together. To be honest with you, I just didn't see that it was worth it. A, it makes it look speckly because you can see where you've sprinkled on the resin. And B, really, I could not tell a difference between the stickiness of the one with the resin versus the one without it. Now, again, it may just be my wax and wax and resin combo. Maybe like those pastilles are more refined and they're less sticky when you melt them. I don't know. But for me, just the beeswax and jojoba oil works just fine. So, you know, that's definitely your mileage may vary situation. I've never used the pastilles, so I've just used the beeswax like in a block that you get from a place that has bees. And so the other thing you're going to need to do is trim your fabric with pinking shears, or what I like to do is just use a rotary cutter that has a pinking blade. So this is what, 45 millimeter. I use a 60 millimeter for cutting fabric for work, but this works just fine for this small kind of process. If you've never used a rotary blade with the pinking blade, it's not as easy as using a flat blade, but it's easier than using pinking shears to me. It's more time efficient because what I do is, you know, whatever size fabric I'm gonna have, like it's pretty okay to go through 4 layers. So I'm just gonna fold this guy up. And again, you know, you're giving these as gifts or using them for yourself. They don't need to be perfectly square, but you can kind of line it up so it looks decent. And then what I tend to do is actually hold this button down because I don't know if it's just because I'm going through 4 layers of fabric or if it's because the pinking blade is not as sharp, but I have to apply a good amount of force to get my edges to cut. And so again, just gonna rotate it. You wanna give yourself enough room on the edge because the pinking blade has depth to it. So if you just try to put the ruler there, you're not gonna get anything. You wanna move it in just a tiny bit. And then, wink, sorry. Again, apply pressure. And I just think this is much faster than pinking with the shears. But if you have pinking shears and you don't have a cutter, like no big deal. You also don't need to worry about if it's ironed or not. I mean, if it has lots of greases, it's probably slightly problematic, but not a huge deal. So, and this is like the rattiest little cutting board ever, but it's older than my child and I just use it occasionally for things like this, so it's gonna hang around still. Okay, so here's the piece of fabric we're gonna do today. You know, size is totally up to you. It's what you feel like you want. You don't have to do squares. You can do whatever shape you want. You can do circles, you can do triangles, whatever. But, you know, just kind of, you'll just figure out what works for you. If you're not sure what sizes to do, go ahead and look on a listing for them, like on Amazon or whatever, and see what like the variety pack dimensions are. And that'll give you a starting place. The other thing is just to like find stuff that you wrap up frequently. Like if you often use half an avocado, like just take out that half an avocado and put a piece of fabric over it and see about how much room you'll need. Okay. So then we're just gonna go ahead and make one of these. It's pretty basic. You just take your wax and brush it on. What? Are you kidding me? That's what you do? Yes, that's totally what you do. I thought I would use the white fabric to hopefully mean you can see a little bit better. If you're like, I feel like my wax is going on a little thick. Like, I think this looks a little thick. 2 things. Either your wax may not be quite warm enough yet, but the other thing is it actually doesn't matter because what we're gonna do is iron in just a minute and it's gonna come out in the wash basically. So you just wanna make sure you have a fairly decent coverage. I mean, really, the thinner the coverage, the better, the less messy it will be when you go to iron it, but it's not crucial. It's definitely like a do it till it seems right kind of craft. But you can see, like, look how much thinner it is there. And it's just because I turned my wax off because the boiling was making a lot of noise. And so it gets thicker and gets on there thicker. But it's no big deal. I'll show you how to take care of it when you're working, or something when you get to the ironing phase. So yeah, that's it, dude. Ba-bow! You made one. What I like to do is make many. Because I mean, if you get this whole setup going, like, you might as well make some wraps, okay? Okay. Now, if you have already cut all your fabric, save a few pieces back that you have not waxed. Because basically, if you find that you have too much, well, okay, for your first few, maybe do the wax and then do the ironing process and do them one at a time so you get a better feel for how much wax you need. Like, oh, that was way too much, or that was way not enough. But generally, you can make quite a few at once. But yeah, leave some aside that you've not painted, because you can use them to kind of basically sop up if you've gotten too much wax on some other ones. So it's pretty easy peasy. Like, it cools off quite quickly. So you don't have to worry about, like, oh, how am I gonna move this from point A to point B? But yeah, and you don't need to worry if it's soaked through the back. You can see this one clearly has not. That's going to happen in the ironing process. If you try to saturate them completely during this, like, brushing on process, you'll get way too much wax on there, and it'll be a horrific mess to deal with. Okay, not horrific, that's an exaggeration, but it'll be messy, and you'll probably waste some wax, and it's not free. So there's that part, and then next we'll do some ironing. So here's another tip. If you're doing a really big one, so like say you want to make one that's going to like go over a 9x13 pan or something, because you like to take stuff to potlucks or what have you. I have found that the best way to do it is to wax one half of it and then fold it over. I obviously did not do the whole thing. And then fold it over and just wax the back of this one. That way you're not moving it around as much. It's a little easier to manipulate. And again, it works just fine when you iron it. It's gonna saturate both sides anyway. It probably won't even stick to itself because you can see it barely saturates the one side. So when I'm doing a larger one, that's what I do. Okay, so now we're back with an iron. You know, use whatever iron you want, but be cautious. You'll be able to see, I don't know if you'll be able to see it on this, but when you're in person, you can see the wax move as you iron, because lots of times you're kind of pressing the wax away. And so you might see the wax start to move. Just keep an eye on it so that you don't get wax all over your iron. And in fact, I'm going to kind of, we'll be a little bit off center, but it's for safety. So you just want to kind of make yourself a little sandwich with your little dude underneath of there. And then your iron just needs to be on the cotton setting. Some people say the linen setting. And no steam. And then you're just going to iron. Now it's a little bit harder for you to see with this being the brown craft paper. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and get us a piece of white. I said craft paper. I really did not mean craft paper. It's parchment. Let's go ahead and get a piece of white paper, because I think you'll be able to see a bit better. Okay, so maybe you can see that better. I don't know, we'll see. So you're gonna be ironing. Now, you're not just ironing, you are pressing, okay? So you'll need to leave the iron on there long enough to get the wax hot. So you're gonna be going slow, and you're basically gonna be pushing out from the middle. And it's kind of just thing, once you get a handle for it, you get a hang of it, you get several going, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's good. But generally, you want less wax. So if there's enough wax, I don't know if you can see that, to like push out, you want to push it out. And you just do that, and then you quickly-ish lift up your paper, and sometimes your dude comes with you, that's fine. But I'll bring it back for you. And you can see it cools very quickly, but right there, it's kind of wonky. So I just need to iron there a little bit more. The wax had just gotten cooled and a little clumped up. You don't want to have any clumps. Definitely no clumps. So just iron that one a little bit more. And ta-da! It's gotten a little clumpy down here. That probably means there's too much wax. I'm just going to push it off, push it off, push it off. And there you have your wrap. Now you can pick it up by the corners pretty quickly. It only takes a few moments to cool down enough that you can touch it pretty much everywhere. But if you want to have like a little drying rack or something nearby, but really by the time you get the next one done, this will probably be dry enough or cool enough to stack. And this is about how much wax I like on mine. See how it's still very pliable and movable? That's how much I like, but you just experiment to find what you like. So let's do the other one that I'm like, whoops, this one's got too much wax on it. Okay, see how it's like thick and clumpy and lumpy? If you're like, okay, you've done a several and you realize that that first one you did had way too much wax on it, what you can do is take another cloth. It doesn't have to be bigger, but it can be. And basically you're going to iron them together. What you're going to do is essentially just transfer the wax from the first cloth onto the second one because it'll absorb. See, you can already see, look at that. So that was clearly too much wax on there. If it's not only going through the layer that we made, but is fully saturating another layer, that's probably too much wax. And you may find if you prefer to do ironing versus painting, you may want to paint them a little thick and then just do the ironing where you get two of them together. It's up to you. But that's what you do if you have two that have, or if you have one that has too much wax. And you just do that, and then just like the other one, you just kind of check on it and see how it's doing. Ta-da! See? Too much wax over here still. It's hard to tell when you have two of them together. But just move it to a place where it's like, okay, well this side doesn't have a lot of wax on it. I'll just do that. I'll scooch it over. And I'll do some more pressing. You gotta go a little bit slower when you have two of them together. Just because you're penetrating an extra layer of fabric, but it's not like that much difference. But just, iron them together. If you like the smell of beeswax like I do, this whole process is wonderful. If you don't like the smell of beeswax, I imagine this would be quite miserable. But I really love the way beeswax smells, so I'm down with it. You can see, like, much better. And then that one looks fairly good. I also wanted to show it to you on the white so you can see that it does discolor whites just a little bit, but it's not bad. So, and as you cool, once you get it the whole thing cool, don't just judge, because in this case this side is cooler than this side, so it feels stiffer. But if you find that you're like, wait, this side feels stiffer, it probably just has too much wax on it, just put it down and iron some of the wax out. But you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but it penetrates the whole thing. That's the whole point of the ironing, is to get it to penetrate through to the back of the fabric. And really you can see that was enough wax to get onto this one just needs a little bit more on the edges. And in fact, it's actually even saturated all the way through the back on this one too. Oh yeah, that's why you can see that it just is darker, slightly more translucent when it gets waxy. That is it, y'all. That's how you do it, right? Not that crazy. You just need to play around with what you like. You might like more wax. You might like, you probably can't get less than I usually do, but you might find that you like more wax or what have you. And then what you do when you're all ready to use it, they say you activate it, which basically means you crumple it up You might want to blow into it if it's for your food or your family's, whatever, you're blowing on it anyway. And that kind of just gets the tackiness going, gets it softened up, especially if your house is cold because of winter. That'll get it softened up and ready to go. And then you can just put it on your thing and put it in the refrigerator, right? Like that's stuck on there. You can also wrap little things up, well, whatever you need, and you can pinch it and twist it, put that in the refrigerator, you know? So it's great for little bits of produce. Don't use meat. Hi. You cannot wash this with hot water, so do not use anything that's meat. I guess theoretically you could use cooked meat, but I wouldn't do it. I would only use this for veg or for something like where maybe there's a stew in the bottom and there's just going over the top. Because you cannot wash this in hot water. The wax will just melt right off of it. Hello. You cannot put it in the dishwasher. You can't put it in the microwave when you're heating up your leftovers. You know, use your noggin. You just need cold water and dish soap or a mild soap to kind of wipe it down if it gets grubby or gross. But yeah, so that's what you do. And this is a very satisfying thing to do. And yeah, I just think they're tacky enough without the resin. Somebody suggested that maybe pine resin, like on an industrial scale, is less expensive than beeswax, and so that's why they use it. And I would not disagree with that possible thing. Or maybe it's just the kind of wax I use is less refined. But then you can just, I would say, when you're ironing them, or when you're folding, don't iron them. When you store them, what I tend to do is fold them slightly differently each time I put them away, just so that I don't get big crease lines in them. I haven't had the experience of the wax breaking down, but it's certainly a possibility. And then, of course, like how many times you can use them varies by how you use them and what have you. That's just your call. But the great thing about doing them yourself is then you can just repair it. Like if it gets cracked, you know how to fix it, yo. You can either heat up your wax and re-wax it, or may just need a treatment underneath the iron. If you do need just a tiny bit of wax, you can grate it with a cheese grater, but you're gonna probably devote that cheese grater to wax because it's very sticky and hard to clean off. Or you can get, like, if you want to have like some of those pastilles just on hand, like if you're like, oh, I frequently crack them, or you know, they get used quite a bit and I just want to have, like, then that you can just actually just sprinkle the pastilles on top of it and iron them in. So if you're doing repairs or what have you. So yeah, I dig them. They're super fun. If you need cleanup, newspaper or craft paper are good at sucking up the wax. If you need to like get wax off of your iron or your ironing board cover, that's what I was going for. So like absorbent papers are good for that, and they clean up pretty well. But yeah, I would not, I mean, you know, obviously use your common sense when you're dealing with maybe people under the high school age. I don't know, middle school would probably, I mean, like my kids would have been fine doing it in middle school. She might have been a little bit afraid of it just because the wax is hot. But I probably wouldn't do it with more than one or two. Like I probably wouldn't do it with more than one middle school kid at a time, just because you got to really keep an eye on things in terms of wax and heat and touching and what have you. So yeah, I hope you found it useful. They're super fun to make, and quite frankly, if you're using scraps and you just, I think beeswax is relatively affordable in those pastilles, like if you just want to try it out, and get some of those on Amazon or what have you. But even if you buy it like from a local place, it's usually like less than $15 a pound. So then the other question that you might have is, how many wax wraps can I make with a pound of wax? I don't know. I would not hesitate to buy a pound though, because you're probably going to use it. But like, just for example, I used about 10 ounces, I would say, probably. I haven't looked at exact. Well, yeah, definitely, probably. No, I probably used about 12 ounces today. And I made some big wraps. And these are all the ones. And as you can see, these are not ironed out yet, so I might get another wrap or two out of like the excess. So yeah, that's quite a few. especially since they're so pricey to buy individually. I think it's a pretty good bargain to do it yourself. So I hope you found that information helpful. I did want to clarify a few things. Well, actually, I think mostly just one thing. I didn't give you good numbers on like my jojoba oil to beeswax ratio in the actual tutorial itself. It's because I kind of just eyeball it. So those little jars that I was using my wax in are about 8 ounces. And so when I have that about half full, I use about a tablespoon of oil, jojoba oil. Sorry, it's not more precise, but I don't want to fib to you. And then I wanted to also show you how many wraps we got. I know I showed you kind of loosely, and also to show you, like, I kind of was saying, oh, I like my wraps to be fairly flexible. That's before the wax totally dries, because once they dry, they are rigid until you activate them, until you do the scrunching up method. So yeah, I got quite a few out of, about 10 ounces. I did not use the whole pound. 10 to 12 ounces of wax. Got me quite a few wraps. And of course, if you're using pine resin, you'll get more per wax ounce that you use. But you'll see I got several pretty large ones in here because that's what I was a bit short on. Where's my bigger ones? That are good to wrap bread in, or again, like if you're trying to cover a casserole or something like that, or if you're proofing bread in a larger vessel. They smell so good. I'm not gonna lie to you. I really just enjoy smelling the beeswax. It's highly pleasant. So that's how many I made out of that. And then, if you need, if you're not a person who has scrap fabric, you don't need scrap fabric, you can buy fat quarters if you want to from the fabric store, which is usually it's a 18-inch square of fabric, and that might be a good starting place. Or lots of times fabric stores will have remnant bins, or if you have an old shirt or an old sheet that you're not even convinced would be useful to push, to send on to a secondhand store, that's a great resource. A lot of people like to use old bed sheets because the fabric is fairly thin for the tightness of the weave if the bed sheets were of fairly good quality. And then, yeah, I think that's all. So I hope you found it useful, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye!